school. As you can see, I'm not Eugenia Barroca, the one who should have been the moderator on behalf of the SOA, the representative for the Europe and the Lusophonia region. But unfortunately, as she's sick at the moment, so I will be replacing her in this webinar. So Sustainable Ocean Alliance, SOA, the next slide, please. I'm going to briefly present the SOA mission and their work, especially for those of you who may not know it yet. SOA mission is to restore the ocean in this lifetime. And it all started with Daniela Fernandez in 2014, when she was still 19 years old during her first year of university. She founded SOA precisely because she wanted to create an organization founded by the youth and for the youth to accelerate solutions to fight the problem of the ocean that the ocean is currently facing. And so far, SOA has supported the implementation of 376 solutions. Next slide, please. So as you can see, SOA's purpose is to fight climate change one solution at a time. There are lots of different solutions with mangroves, with litter monitoring, education, coral reefs, and so many other amazing projects. Next one. Here you can see the SOA's global impact. The 376 solutions advanced to heal, restore, and sustain our ocean are divided in, let's say, two categories. 56 are startups accelerated, and 320 are grant projects founded. Even myself, I'm from representing SOA Black Sea from Romania, and we had a few projects in the last years founded by SOA, and some data about the impact that these projects are realizing are about, let's say, the CO2 reduced, avoided or sequestered, the coastlines monitored, and the climate change adaptations. We have created blue jobs careers, about 636 by now, and we have avoided 1,755 metric tons of solid waste or upcycled or avoided. Next one, please. As you can see here, we are from a lot of parts of the world. Our community, global community, includes 83 youth lead hubs in 43 countries, more than 300 committed investors, and more than 165 ecopreneurs. There are already more than 7,000 youth leaders in 186 countries. As I already mentioned, I'm representing Romania, and 26 policy advisor council members, and more than 2,080 mentors. Next one, please. So there's a lot of diverse youth leaders. We have 55% female leaders. All of us are young people, 27 years old on average. And 40% of our youth leaders are indigenous primary stakeholders. Next. So here we have the SOA grants and ecopreneurs impact areas. There are 5 of them. We have one on greenhouse gas reduction, gas reduction, blue carbon, and CO2 removal or avoidance, pollution reductions, circular use, waste removal or avoidance, ecosystem and species preservation and restoration, The next one is about blue food, fisheries, aquaculture, and seafood alternatives. And the last one, ocean data, literacy, and research. This is our impact areas. The next one. So if you want to keep in touch and stay involved with SOA, I invite you to scan the QR code. And if you have any questions or curiosities, you can write to Eugenia, the representative for Europe and Lusophonia. But as I mentioned, it might take a little bit of time for her to answer you, as she's still sick at the moment. So that was for us. I hope you get the time to scan the QR, and yeah, thank you very much. That was all.
Thank you very much, Lavinia. The QR code will be shown at the end again, so in case it doesn't work, it's also in the chat box. And before we dive into our topic, just maybe a few housekeeping rules. We are many people in the call, so I encourage everyone to stay muted, and we will have an engaging Q&A at the end. And you either can post your questions in the Q&A or in the chat box, whatever is easiest for you. And then Lavinia and I will read them out to the speakers. So depending if you have a special question for a special speaker, then it would be nice if you can just write the name together with the question you would like to have the question asked to. Exactly. So then let's start with the topic. So the topic for today is climate resilience and MPAs. So how can MPAs, marine protected areas, contribute to climate resilience? And we will dive into a few insights of COP28, the conference that was in December last year. And this whole webinar kind of aligns with one of the Ocean Decade Challenges, number 5, that basically focuses on ocean-based solutions for climate mitigation. So I would ask our speakers to briefly introduce themselves, and then we can start our roundtable discussion. And as you can see on the slide here, Puri, you may start to introduce yourself, and thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you, Laura. Good evening, good afternoon, whatever, depending on where you are. And thank you for inviting me to this interesting webinar. And I really love to be with young people. So imagine also most of our audience is youth. So great to share with you some of the learnings of the years of experience of marine protected areas managers on developing this topic. So particularly, I'm here in quality of coordinator of the European Union Ocean Governance Project, which connects managers and networks of marine protected areas managers around the Atlantic and Southeast Asia, but also beyond. So in fact, we are connecting actually in the global ocean. And in addition of this professional job, I'm also the president of the Mediterranean Network of Marine Protected Areas Managers, MEDPAN. So glad to be with you tonight. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Puri. And we're looking forward to hear all your experiences on this topic. Mitchell, you're the next one.
Hi folks, hello from quite a rainy Scotland. So my name is Dr. Mitchell Lennan. I am a lecturer or assistant professor in environmental law at the University of Aberdeen. I'm also an early career researcher at the One Ocean Hub. So if you've not heard of the One Ocean Hub, I've just posted a link there in the chat for you. But our focus is we're an international research partnership across 5 different countries, and our focus is really on kind of fair and inclusive decision making for a healthy ocean, so that people and the planet can flourish. So thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. In terms of my background, I come from a marine science background, and then I moved into international law. So I research and teach international environmental law and law of the sea, that sort of thing. So yeah, delighted to be here. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Mitchell, for making the time tonight. Loreley.
Thank you very much, Laura. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you. I've already seen friends posting in the chat, so it's really great to be here connecting from Paris and France. So yeah, I'm Loreley Picourt. I'm the Executive Director of the Ocean and Climate Platform, which is an international network of about 100 members from civil society, doing their best to get the ocean climate biodiversity nexus really high on the political agenda. So I work mostly at the Climate Convention, the UNFCCC, and the Biodiversity Convention, making the ocean our lighthouse to connect the dots across the different agendas and priorities, working a little bit on marine protected areas and how they contribute as well to fighting climate change. So great to be here with you.
Thank you very much, Loreley. I think, as you can see, we have 3 very esteemed speakers tonight who have a special and different background as well. So that's why we're extra happy to ask you and to start with the questions and really encourage you to see it from the lens of your personal expertise and show the importance of the interdisciplinary connectedness that we have in this field. So I will start with the first question and I will ask each one of you to answer it, and we'll go in the order Mitchell, Loreley, and Puri. And the question is, can you elaborate on the specific ways in which MPAs contribute to climate resilience, highlighting successful examples?
Yeah, great question. I'm glad I got to go first in this one. So I think before we start that, I think it's good to just reflect on the fact that many of us will know this already, but you know, the ocean itself is a carbon sink and it's also a heat sink as well. Oh, we've lost the slide. Okay, that's fine. But it's not just the ocean as a physical body of water that is a carbon sink. Okay, it's also the life that's within it at every single level in the ecosystem. So a healthy marine ecosystem, therefore, acts itself as a carbon sink, right? So there are mitigation benefits of MPAs, okay? So both through a healthy marine ecosystem and carbon sequestration and so on. And then, of course, there's adaptation benefits as well. So that could be a range of different things that many others will probably elaborate on after me, so I won't take up too much time, but things like coastal resilience and so on. But also adaptation in terms of or climate change resilience on land as well. So, and how do MPAs do that on land? Well, they support livelihoods for ocean-dependent communities, okay, not just through kind of providing nutritious foods, but also supporting participation in kind of cultural rights and so on for different ocean users as well. And then in terms of examples and so on, I don't work or I'm not involved in any kind of conservation projects, so I'll probably leave that for another person. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mitchell. You made my life much easier, you know, laying the ground for me. Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with everything that you said, and it was a dream of mine to bring the adaptation, mitigation, and resilience aspect of marine protected areas to the climate debate, because I think it was Barack Obama, but I'm not sure about this, so don't quote me on this, who said that marine protected areas are climate reserves. But I heard that so many times, but no one had actually proven it. So we worked with our scientific committee, which is presided by Dr. Jacqueline Claudet, and I thought, okay, we really need to identify how protecting those carbon pools can actually contribute to climate mitigation. So as Mitchell brilliantly said, that's what we have identified, is that it's really important to properly define where you will protect, because that's, at the end of the day, that's the heart of the debate. Where are you going to be putting your marine protected area? And if it's placed in areas where you have coastal blue carbon ecosystems, so for instance, mangrove, salt marshes, and seagrass, that's where you can capitalize on those ecosystems that can store a lot of carbon. So that's our first point. Fully agree. And also, of course, in terms of adaptation, having those ecosystems that act as buffers against the impacts of climate change. So we've heard that already, but what I find very useful with marine protected areas in terms of climate is also how they're one of the most perfect tools for us to connect the dots across the different issues. We're talking about food security, we're talking about resilience, we're talking about livelihoods. We know that most of these coastal areas are also perfect, you know, fishery nurseries and so on and so forth. So it's really one way, as a policy nerd, as someone who works on governance, it's really a very concrete example to highlight how we can you know, I shouldn't say kill two birds with one stone, because that's not ideal for biodiversity, but how we can really have a tool that addresses biodiversity challenges and the loss of biodiversity, but also those climate benefits, while in the meantime putting communities at the very heart of their design. And I will leave as well to Puri the very concrete examples, because I can only have the ones that I can criticize because they're not being enforced. So handing over to Puri.
Okay, so there's not a lot to say after my two colleagues with Mitchell and Loreley, but yeah, I want to stress this, what has been said, this role in capturing carbon, the role in helping in the adaptation, especially the resilience in coastal areas. So this is obvious. So this is something I used to talk about 30 years ago, and nobody was listening in the Mediterranean coast. They continue to build on the coastline and don't take care about the marine ecosystems that were protected. Today, it's obvious. All the areas that still maintain seagrasses communities, they have less coastal erosion than in these areas that disappear. And in addition, we know that this is an ecosystem that captures directly CO2. But for me, what you mentioned, Loreley, at the end is connecting the dots. For me, this is crucial, because unfortunately, on the climate change policies, we have been taking from a long time ago, from the Kyoto Protocol, when it was established, we have been taking a very silo-oriented approach and dividing things and just looking at small parts and losing the connection. And if there's one characteristic of the carbon, is that carbon is a cycle, is a cycling element that connects life, is the basis of life together with water and carbon, with nitrogen and a few more minerals. But the cycle of carbon, I never could understand. I was taught this cycle of carbon when I was 10 years old, and it was obvious that was moving around everything in the planet, but everything also including life. So I couldn't understand for years that we could try to manage climate change problems forgetting life, and especially forgetting the ocean, in which the big part of the cycle is happening. And it's obviously the ocean is not related just to the carbon; it's also related, especially to the balance on the temperature. So they move the mass of water helps to balance the different heat. So all this makes for me the ocean as the crucial place to really change the approach for our policies, because these policies requires, as you say, to work with people, taking care of the two dimensions: people as being victims of this climate change, because there is important changes in the ecosystems that transform their livelihoods, but also people as the center of the change in the behavior that may enable a good response to the climate change problem. And this climate change problem has to include the management of the ecosystems, especially marine ecosystems. So from this point of view, marine protected areas provide excellent laboratories to prove the value of a proper approach on those ecosystems and a good management. So we compare MPAs that are properly managed with those that are not, that unfortunately are a big percentage. We see the difference in the impacts. And also we see that we can use them to provide, as you say, more to food security and protect the coast and maintain the human culture that also disappears when those ecosystems disappear. So for me, marine protected areas may be the starting point of connecting everything, but it's not the ending point, because it's not enough. Even if we manage properly marine protected areas, we will not reach the target. So we need to expand what we learn in marine protected areas and apply in larger areas. So we need 100% of the ocean protected, not necessarily until the same limitations, but with taking care of their contribution to the overall life and carbon cycle.
Yes, thank you so much. Really interesting to hear, yeah, especially your personal different backgrounds on your work on MPAs. So I really appreciate it, and yeah, look forward to questions maybe from the audience afterwards. But Lavinia, you're allowed to ask the second question. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Laura, and to the speakers. So the second question is, what key takeaways from COP28 highlight the importance of integrating marine protected areas into climate resilience strategies? And the order will be Loreley, Puri, and Mitchell.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a tough question. It's a bit unfair to have me start because I'm the climate COP is a little bit like my prom night. So, okay, before I answer your question, I'll start with the outcomes maybe briefly of the ocean at COP28, because I think it's very important to highlight some positive outcomes. And trust me, I was not so positive about the idea of going to Dubai for a climate COP. So I think there are some takeaways that we need to highlight here. The first one that is unrelated to the ocean, but still very important, or actually related, but anyways, it was one of the COPs where we saw the most participation from indigenous communities. IPLCs were truly at the heart of this COP. One of the reasons is also because the UAE made available some specific funds to allow for communities to travel to UAE. And you know, on the first day of COP, when you walk down these gigantic aisles with, you know, 80,000 people coming from all over the world, and you have this diversity, it kind of allows you to reconnect with the fact that we're here for humanity. We're not here for negotiations. We're not here for papers and so on and so forth. There's the whole human dimension behind it. And that was definitely one of the highlights of my COP. So I wanted to share that with you. And then if we dive into the ocean, first of all, COP28 was the most important COP since COP21 in Paris. It was the COP of the global stocktake, the global evaluation of how we're not on track to achieve the objectives of the Paris Agreement. We saw fantastic mobilization, high attendance, but in terms of deliverables, it was genuinely a critical COP. And in the outcomes of the global stocktake of COP28, there are some progress. In terms of adaptation, for instance, we're not doing well. The global goal for adaptation was not met to the standards that we were expecting. So, you know, it's pros and cons in terms of the outcomes. But we have made progress with regards to the ocean, because for once, we can actually say that it was not left out of the discussion. We have ocean, marine, coastal ecosystems, but also beyond that, ocean-based transport, renewable energy, as well, all those co-benefits in terms of food security and so on and so forth, that have been acknowledged in most of the part of the decision when it comes to mitigation, when it comes to adaptation, but also in terms of ways forwards and how to connect the dots. And I think that is such a powerful and strong message that the Climate Convention has finally recognized that the ocean does not separate us, but it really unites us all. And it's identified as a genuine source of solution to address the climate crisis. We're part of the portfolio of solutions. And that is something that we can be extremely proud of, because it has been work for the last 10 years for many of us. And it is a global recognition that is unprecedented. So that is very, very positive. I may stop here because I can speak about this for 2 hours. So I will give an opportunity to Mitchell and Puri to complement as well, but happy to debate this some more.
Thanks, Loreley. So I fully agree with what you say. Just maybe let me bring, since I'm the oldest person here, bring some information from years ago. My first COP of the Climate Change Convention was in 2005 in Montreal. And I was absolutely frustrated when I was attending the sessions. At this time, as an NGO, you could join all the plenaries and everything. It's not like that there's the blue zone, the green zone, and you need a second badge and all this. You could follow everything. And I was frustrated when I saw that they were discussing about climate change and was not the word nature mentioned a single time, not the word ocean, of course. So nothing about the real places in which the carbon is moving, apart from the fossil fuels. So since there, fortunately, very slowly, but and especially as you remind in the COP21 in Paris, the ocean has been put first nature. The first step was to include forests with the red mechanism and the transformation of uses of land, but then ocean also arrived. So since Paris probably now was the first coping with some joint action from the governments that goes beyond the simple declaration or recognition of the ocean is start happening. So I'm optimistic in terms of, when I look back, I see, okay, today is in the agenda, probably the most relevant in terms of governmental actions in the COP, because there were a lot of nice side events, a lot of civil society pushing. So this is really important. It's the basis for motivating the governments. But this, for me, this joint declaration about the ocean and climate that pushes on the management, the proper management of 100% of the ocean, for me, this is something that is very important, even if it's today is not yet in an operating state, because it's just a joint declaration. But it's very important that a number of countries join this joint declaration, and they stress the need to manage properly 100% of the ocean. And for me, this is also relevant because it connects with the need to manage well MPAs to show what's the model for the overall ocean. And if we look at the connection that it also is needed, and it was more reinforced during this COP in Dubai, between the different conventions, climate change, but also biodiversity. And this is fundamental. We need to connect the conventions. So I was in 1992 in Rio when the three conventions, the Rio conventions were created. And these conventions were not created as isolated tools, were created as three complementary tools to respond to the challenges of the planet, to really reach a sustainable planet. Unfortunately, for different reasons that now is not the moment to discuss, we had now different status on these COPs. But the three conventions are complementary. So when you have desertification, and when I talk about desertification, I also think that the desertification in the sea, because nobody looks at the loss of habitats underwater, and this is crucial to recover those marine habitats. It's not in this convention, but it's under the idea, the concept of desertification, also the marine habitats. So all the systems are systems that the basis is the carbon. When we desertify as an area, we are releasing carbon. Exactly the same in biodiversity. So in this COP in Dubai, the connection between these three conventions were very, very clearly put on the agenda. So now we need to work. Obviously, this is the challenge for next COPs to really create the mechanism, because you know the problem when you participate in different COPs, you see the same countries, but you don't see the same individuals that representing these countries. So these silos in the ministries makes that the people that negotiates in one COP is different of the people in another COP, and is also different in the internal policies at national level. So we need to recognize the importance of connecting all this, and including the marine dimension, to really progress. And I think it was a good step. Obviously, a lot of work to do, but if we look back, now is obviously much better. So I'm optimistic, and I think, again, marine protected areas can just put the right models to move faster on achieving this good management of the 100% ocean.
Wow, well, these are really great inputs as well. So it's a shame I'm going last, but thankfully there's a few issues I can maybe pick up on as well. So I think my first kind of takeaway from COP, just to reiterate everything Loreley has said already, and Puri as well. But I think one concern for me actually was a lot of focus on techno fixes and geoengineering, particularly in the ocean, even in the ocean space of the COP. So that concerned me in many different ways, and I won't go into this too much, but this was a big concern for me rather than a focus on, I don't want to call it nature-based solutions either, but focus more on the ecological solutions for climate change resilience. So that was the first point. A colleague has actually told me to slow down, so I do apologise for my speed and my Scottish accent. I've been speaking with my native colleagues all day, so sorry. So slow down for my international audience. And then the second point I wanted to make primarily was the fact that this, and again, this kind of final integration of the ocean within the UNFCCC space and policy discussion, and again, this reiteration again at Dubai and on the importance of sort of ocean-based climate action, and the fact that the global stock take did not go far enough either in adaptation or indeed in mitigation either. But it reflects the fact that parties need to, if they do have MPAs, they need to be including them in their nationally determined contributions for their mitigation potential and including them in their national adaptation plans for their adaptation potential as well. I think that's really important, and a lot of states aren't doing that, even though they might already be protecting areas of ocean under their jurisdiction. And then that brings me to the importance again. Puri, you'd already talked about some of the Rio treaties as well and the importance there. So this brings me to other areas of law, other treaties and agreements that almost all the UNFCCC parties are also party to. And so the first one I'm going to talk about is the CBD, and the second one I'll talk about the BBNJ agreement, or the High Seas Treaty, or whatever you want to call it, in the few minutes that I've got. And it's essentially that with the CBD provides us all this guidance on how protected areas, whether they're on land or in the ocean, can kind of enhance resilience to different ecosystems to climate change. So a lot of the guidance is already there, and it's already been agreed by the same countries, but under consensus and so on. And what the CBD also stresses, though, is this kind of socio-ecological importance and connectivity with MPAs in terms of climate resilience. So I think that's really important. So it's not just the climate change regime, but this kind of integration that we really need, and integrating socio-ecological benefits into the kind of design and the management of marine protected area networks and so on. And then I just wanted to kind of briefly mention the BBNJ agreement as well, because it's not just marine protected areas coast to the coast. We're talking about 100%. 100% ocean approach. If we can ever get that, I think that would be fantastic. And so the BBNJ agreement, in terms of area-based management tools and so on, is going to be really, really important. And now the text of the BBNJ agreement does include provisions on climate resilience. It recognises tacitly the kind of ocean climate nexus, and it also mentions interaction with other treaties and also cooperation in other fora as well. So that brings us back then to the COP. So I think, to wrap up, I mean, my concern is this move to kind of techno fixes. I think that's going to be really dangerous, and I think we really need to watch out for that over things like protected areas and nature-based solutions, and then also just the importance of this kind of integrated approach as well. So just to kind of reiterate what other colleagues have said. Thanks very much.
Sorry, is it okay if I compliment as well something? Sorry, thank you. I'm very passionate about this topic. And to actually answer your question, which I didn't really do in my first speaking role, how can the outcomes of COP28 can ensure that parties to the UNFCCC integrate marine protected areas? I want to highlight two things. The first thing is some have already done so, and that's already a good effort. And I'm going to share in the chat a report that we published with a few NGO partners, as we have analyzed all the national strategies from all the parties to the UNFCCC, trying to understand how they have integrated coastal and marine nature-based solutions, and marine protected areas being one of those solutions. So the good news is that it's already happening. The better news is that we can do much better. And in that regard, the global stocktake is an indicator for parties on how to correct course. And now, with all of this knowledge out there on the role of marine protected areas in climate adaptation, mitigation, resilience, and so on and so forth, is that we have a great opportunity to pursue this advocacy as well that we have been doing with some countries, to encourage them to include more marine protected areas in their national strategies, which will be revised at COP30 in Brazil. So in 2025, again, 2025 will be a very big and important year for the ocean, and the 10th year anniversary of the Paris Agreement. So aside from all the symbolic here, we also an opportunity to do things right. And as both Mitchell and Puri mentioned, is also highlight in those national strategies how we can really emphasize how these climate goals and biodiversity goals and high seas goals are genuinely connected. And one way to do that is to include marine protected areas in those NDCs or nationally determined contributions, or their counterparts in different forms. Cool.
Yeah, thank you so much for these elaborative answers. And I think it makes it pretty clear that we are talking about one global ocean, right? And not like fragmented part, but that it's all connected. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And our third question will be, from your personal perspective, what role do international partnerships and initiatives play in supporting the establishment and management of MPAs? And we will ask Puri to answer first, and then Loreley and Mitchell.
Well, I really love this question. This is what I'm really trying to do for years, which is connecting all the people that work on marine protected areas management and connect them normally at national and regional level, but also at global level, because, you know, one of the big challenges on all those conventions is that the people that are the practitioners on the ground, they don't know exactly what they are about, just know by the information that is in the media, but they don't know exactly how those decisions concern their daily job. But they are the final ones that determine whether this ecosystem will be really helping in the adaptation, will be capturing more carbon or not. So we really need to build capacity also on the component on climate change. For instance, in MEDPAN in the Mediterranean, back 12 years ago, we organized the first training to address climate change from the MPA management point of view. And I remember the first time I talked about this in the neighborhood, people, the managers, some of them told to me, but this is not our business. This is another, no, this is absolutely your business. But we did this training. A number of them attend the training. They learn basic things and they start working and exchanging between them. And today it's obvious that climate change is a topic that concerns them, but still very few management plans includes resilient components and climate change aspects related to the management. So there's a lot of work to do here. So that's why it's so important to connect. And I've been working through the EU Ocean Governance Project in the Atlantic and Southeast Asia. And I really love what we were doing. That was, by one part, we were attending the COPs and just being the voice of the managers in these negotiations, which is not usual, but also translating what was approved in the COP into actions that are useful for the management. And we have been working with local and indigenous communities in Southeast Asia, restoring coral reefs, restoring mangroves, and really identifying what are the key elements on the ground, because it's not the same language, it's not the same understanding, but it's important that everyone can fit in this cooperation to solve the planetary problems. And thanks to these connections and then allowing them to visit other MPAs in their regions, allowing them to participate in the International Marine Protected Areas Congress in Vancouver and meeting with other indigenous and local communities doing the same in completely different marine ecosystems, but with the same needs and the same challenges. This really makes an opportunity to really move faster in the implementation of solutions, because in fact, the solutions are already there, especially nature-based solutions. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to allow the wheel to turn, because we are just putting obstacles in the wheel. And we need to help people to move the wheels and adapt this knowledge to their situation. One of the things we did was to organize a training. This was organized by the Patagonian Forum, one of our partners. And it was a training on management effectiveness that they had developed for the countries from South Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina, and Chile. We organized for all the Spanish-speaker countries. And they share experiences from MPAs in Antarctica to the Caribbean or the Mediterranean. And it was very nice to see how managers that are in such different areas of the ocean, they share common concerns on how to be more effective in their management. So international cooperation is crucial, but it's not only across equal people. It's important to connect different levels, because we are actually we are operating like water and oil, that they are touching, but they don't mix. And this is an obstacle for the implementation of policies. So the global governance, the regional governance, the national governance needs to connect in the different levels, and as well as transversal. This is the role of the partnerships. And today, for instance, thanks to this project, I'm helping with other networks to create a global space for cooperation of networks of marine protected areas. We have networks in the Atlantic, in the Indian Ocean, in the Pacific. And yeah, I think this is something, is a new approach. And we can not only solve the problems of the ocean, of the planet, by cooperating. And cooperation requires, first of all, sharing knowledge and sharing visions and sharing tools and joining forces. That's, for me, is crucial. There's another way to go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Puri, for this powerful statement. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I love that question, obviously, because the very essence of my work is about collaboration. And I do believe, I genuinely believe in multilateralism, in collaboration, in sharing, in sharing data, in sharing information, good practices, bad practices. Of course, it's about human connections. It's about sharing this work. And with another hat, yet another hat, I have the privilege of coordinating civil society for the Ocean and Coastal Zone theme at the UNFCCC. The baseline is I'm supposed to coordinate hundreds of stakeholders that may have diverging interests to make sure that we speak as one voice at the climate COPs, which is sometimes challenging, but every time rewarding. And I think that's a very important example. First of all, because the Climate Convention and soon the CBD, trust me, we're working very hard on this. They're among the only conventions, UN treaties, that have a dedicated space for civil society. And that is an absolute privilege, because in these fora where negotiations and the outcomes are driven by parties, making sure that we can bring on the voice of non-state actors, whether they are businesses, NGOs, cities, it's absolutely crucial to make sure that not only the discussion is fair, that we raise ambition. And for those of you who have attended those climate COPs, let's be real, when you go to the negotiations, you're bored and depressed. When you go to the civil society zone, you're excited, energized, and all of a sudden you have all these new partnerships that are coming together. So that's, I think, for the mental health of everyone, it's important to keep that balance. And bringing those initiatives, those great projects that are taking place all over the globe, being able to share them. And in that regard, if you bear with me another couple more minutes, I'd like to share our latest exercise in the spirit of collaboration. If you can see my screen, so with a group of about 30 colleagues, and here I want to stress that it was done on a voluntary basis, so I'm very grateful, because this guy's got on board a crazy project for a year, and just got, making the ocean narrative move forward as a result. And what we tried to do is having experts in the fields that you can see on the slide here, with marine conservation, shipping, aquatic food, renewable energy, and coastal tourism, as well as experts on finance, governance, inclusivity, as well as finance, have all of these different types of people representing very different interests work together on defining what the blueprint for the ocean could be. And we have come up with these ocean breakthroughs, and I'll share with you, the links as we are still in the process of scaling up this work. But the idea here was to really identify 5 sectors in which accelerated action and investment could really make a difference in terms of delivering the goals for climate change and, reducing up to 35% of the greenhouse gas emissions needed by 2050. In terms of biodiversity, how do we make sure that, decarbonizing the shipping industry also means investing in new technologies that will not destroy the environment in the meantime? How do we make sure that ocean renewable energy and offshore winds are being scaled up without being based in marine protected areas, for instance? So all of this is trying to have the broader picture about how the ocean can be a lighthouse in delivering for the biggest challenges of our time. And that was only made possible through collaboration from civil society. And what was quite impressive in this work, and trust me, we did not expect it to be so well received, is that at the end of the day, regardless of the sector in which you work, you want to be connected to something that makes sense, to something that is meaningful. And through the ocean breakthroughs, what we have managed to do is have a common thread, make sure that our work is meaningful, of course, for the global common, and making sure that we protect our blue planet, but also to make sure that we remain relevant in terms of tackling challenges. And I think it was a funky experience, I have to say, to put that together in a year. But we now have this common blueprint to be shared with non-state actors across the board, but also with the support of countries. And I'll close with that, is that I believe in positive actions, let's say, and we have designed this. All of this work is based on a very simple approach that we call the Blue Ambition Loop. And for us, the Blue Ambition Loop is powerful, ambitious leadership from non-state actors can in turn have very positive influence on governments to make sure that they implement more ambitious policies to protect our ocean. And we're all on board. We're all on the same boat with regards to the challenges that we're facing. So while it is the responsibilities of NGOs, but also non-state actors to ensure that countries are accountable for what they have committed to doing, it's also our responsibility to make sure that we get there. So I think, to respond overall in your question, yes, collaborations are absolutely crucial in getting anything done.
Well, it's my turn now, isn't it? So that's great. Oh, these have all been amazing. Actually, it's really inspiring to hear both of those interventions and then come to mind. So we talked about international partnerships, and I guess I'm a researcher and I'm part of a research partnership that is international. So I think I'll talk about that. And so I mentioned I'm a member of the One Ocean Hub. I posted a link in the chat at the very beginning, and we're an international research partnership, and really what we're seeking to do is kind of bridge this disconnect and the current disconnections that we see between law, science, policy, to try and kind of integrate governance frameworks and balance different ocean uses and with conservation, okay, with things like MPAs, okay, and to do that you need to empower communities as well. It's communities that use the ocean, and especially women and especially children, and those communities that are most reliable on the ocean to inform decision making, right? And to do that, you need to then not just respect, but also listen to, on the same level as anything else, different values and knowledge systems. And so with the One Ocean Hub, we've managed to bring together, say, coastal people, researchers, decision makers, civil society, international organizations, including the UNFCCC Secretariat, UN Food and Agriculture Organization, for example, all together to kind of value and learn from different forms of knowledge and voices. And again, for context, just to say, there's 100 researchers or more than 100 researchers within the hub. And we address different challenges and opportunities, but we're based in the UK, we're based in South Africa, Namibia, Ghana, Fiji, and then also the Solomon Islands. And so how do we collaborate? How do we do this research? And we do it through kind of transdisciplinary research most of the time. And that's a case of involving individuals outside and knowledge holders outside of academia and generating knowledge with them in order to inform decision making. And I'm going to add a link, an example to one of our case studies in Namibia where that's worked really, really well, where communities have then been empowered to make decisions in marine spatial planning as well. And I think that's kind of all I really want to say in terms of that. But it's being a part of this research organization and research project for the past 5 years has just been incredible. And in terms of how we communicate with one another, despite we have different priorities, values, knowledge systems, that sort of thing, many ways we communicate with each other is through the arts and through things like theatre and so on. We brought a theatre project to COP27 last year as well, and that was really well attended, in a way to communicate different emotions that we might all feel within decision-making spheres, and try and kind of smooth out power imbalances and so on. And yeah, it's just been a wonderful project to be part of. So in terms of international partnerships and so on, it's just been they're the most important thing in order to make meaningful change in the ocean. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. And since we are more than one on schedule for this meeting, I'll add one more question, but please, we need a short answer. So the question is, how do you see the role of youth and early career having the most impact in the strategic priorities? And the order of the answers will be Puri, Mitchell, and Loreley.
Sorry, I couldn't find the micro. Well, I think it's crucial, the involvement of youth on all these strategies. So the world is moving very fast, and we need really to prepare the people up to this changing of the situation. So young people are the only ones that can do this in the coming years. So those cannot be decisions taken by people in the 60s that you have to apply. You must to be part of the discussions, part of the solution. Obviously not alone, because I think the big mistake in this world is that for years only old people were the ones that took the decisions. Then we shift, and the young executive were the most successful individuals, and we forget all about the old people, and we oblige them to take the retreat at 50 when you are in plenty of capacity. I think that the same way we are talking about connecting the dots, we need to connect the society. We need to include all the dimensions of our society. And young people is a fundamental dimension, but all people that have experience as well. So there's not only one vision, and as well as in gender balance is fundamental, not just men and women, all the diversity of interpretations of gender in our society, as well as traditional knowledge. So the big challenge in this world to find solutions is to really being able to have as much people, as much point of view involved in the solutions. So please be active, push to be there, and provide your understanding, but also learn from experience of the others, so you will have more opportunities that reinventing the wheel, but we need to work all together. There's not other way. It's exactly the same as partnerships. Intergenerational partnerships are also fundamental.
Yeah, so just for my short intervention, I mean, anytime I'm in the UN climate space, whether that's in Bonn or at COPs, I'm always just so impressed by in terms of youth and children and their understanding of what is happening to them, their perception of what is happening to them, and their ability to express what needs to happen. I was speaking at a children's event, or a children's climate event during Dubai, and there was a short video which I'm frantically Googling and trying to find so I can share it with you, with a Brazilian children's rights organization called Lennan. But they understand concepts like loss and damage. They understand climate finance, and they're able to express it in very simple ways. I mean, there was an example where they said there was a 5-year-old girl who said, well, if we started fixing this a long time ago, it wouldn't cost as much money. Okay, how much more simply can you put it? And this way that you can communicate or youth can communicate ideas in very, very simple ways and understand really complicated things and put forward solutions. And so they have a legal right to be listened to in decisions that affect them under the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And the Committee on the Rights of the Child has passed General Comment number 26 on children's human rights to a healthy environment, including on climate change. And this reiterates that fact that they need to be included. And it also brings in the ocean in that space as well, but we can talk about that a lot later. So I do see a kind of a children's COP at some point very, very soon. And the other thing I'd like to see is a kind of IPCC report on the effects of climate change on children as well. And I think I can see the youth kind of pushing for that as well. And not just obviously as a cohesive whole. I said there's lots of different objectives and so on with perceptions in youth, but I can see that being an outcome very soon as well. So I do think we need a dedicated children's COP our Children and Youth COP. Cheers.
Thank you. I think that's a great idea. Maybe I'll focus a little bit more on young ocean professionals than young professionals in general, and say something that might be a little bit controversial. That's something I'm struggling with. So please tell me what you think. I'm really interested. I think that young ocean professionals absolutely need to be at the discussion table. 100%. They should be part of delegations, whether it is with universities, with countries. Countries should have young delegates on board with them. But I don't think that young ocean professionals should be there because they're young. I don't think that it grants you the right to be somewhere. You need to be there because you're competent. And I'm tired of, you know, having these youth forums in the margins of main conferences and main events, because at the end of the day you have these huge gatherings which are highly helpful to connect, to network, to share, and so on and so forth, but you're not part of the discussion. So I want this to change. I think youth forums are great and we should keep having them, but I want to see a lot more young professionals within the heart of those discussions. And I think that one way to do that is to pursue a career, whether you're a scientist, a policy person, an architect, or God knows what, but aspire to raise your voice with regards to issues that you know and where you can genuinely contribute. Just to give you an example, is that I'm 30, although I look 12, and I run a team of 12 people. In my team, they're all between 22 and 31 years old. We're all very young. We were never qualified as a youth organization. However, if you ask anyone in the ocean climate field, they will know about the Ocean and Climate Platform. And I have an army of brilliant young people, and they're just highly qualified, and they deserve a voice. They deserve to be sitting with ministers and with CEOs because they're so qualified, and every single one of you can reach that as well and should be able to reach that, but not because you're young and you're trying to you know, raise concerns. No, you need to contribute to the solution, because it is that creativity, that youth, that all of this energy that will genuinely make a difference. Yeah, that's for me.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge that we can learn from, and also inspire us and to stay motivated and to keep working. And I'm truly inspired and eager to take action after everything that you said. And we have plenty of questions already, so I'll start by asking the first one, and that's from an anonymous person, but it is the following: do you have any suggestions on engaging with people in communities that are opposed to the implementation of an MPA that has not yet been put into place? Where our main concern will be changing of traditional activities on the land/water. There's no specific speaker indicated, so anyone that feels comfortable can start. And you don't all have to answer the questions. We have at least 9 questions already, so.
Maybe this is something that I had to address several times, and work with many managers and institutions. So this is quite often that happens, that people don't want a protected area. So one of the best ways is to take those people to visit an MPA that works. That's why it's so important, a good management, because if you establish a marine protected area and you don't manage well, the results, the positive results, outcomes will not appear, will not be obvious for the population, and they will continue opposing. But if you manage well, this will disappear. Normally, when an MPA is well managed, along the time disappears. But for those that oppose at the beginning, I think that probably the best solution is to organize a field visit to an MPA with another community and allow those people to talk with equivalent individuals in another place that are in favor, because they already know the benefits of this MPA. So because only Unfortunately, public administrations not always have a good credibility. Science neither, because we scientists talk a language that normally is not well understood by the normal population. It's needed as a rationale for the MPAs, but it's not the best language to communicate. But if you just put them to see a good example and talk with normal people that had this benefit, this is the best you can.
Thank you very much for answering the question. I hope it is, it has answered the question as the person wanted it to be. Does anyone else want to contribute something to this, or should Lavinia ask the next question? Maybe, yeah, Loreley.
Yeah, just very briefly, I think not with regards to a specific issue or MPA, I think there's a greater need for raising awareness. What are marine protected areas way ahead of time, and really working with local populations to understand those benefits and try to get, dialogue for me is always the way forward, and making sure that the governments as well, the local governments, facilitate those debates and those discussions with the scientists, with the people that will be responsible for implementing and monitoring the MPA, the local fishermen, and how all these benefits can really be shared across the different types of communities involved. That I think that usually helps a little bit.
So maybe I just can add here that we talk a lot about the dimension of management, looking at the ecosystem, but management includes also good governance, and governance is how this MPA will relate with the people, and this is something that has to be addressed from the very beginning, just to point this.
Yeah, exactly on that point, I think, and I won't add any more apart from just to refer to that link in that video where that's a perfect example of involving a community, therefore to empower them and ocean-based decision making, and therefore hopefully reduce opposition as well. So just to refer back to that.
Thank you very much. Now I will proceed with the second question from Jeremy and Blade Evans. The question is, should marine protected areas be used to grow more seagrass, more seaweed, such as through multi-trophic aquaculture, and more house mussel for climate change offsetting?
Well, maybe I can respond. I think there is not a single response for this, because each MPA needs a management plan, and this management plan must identify what is adequate or not adequate. Initially, I will say that considering that today MPAs are less than 10% of the surface of the planet, I would rather focus on protecting the natural ecosystem on these MPAs and developing other systems more with economic aspects around MPAs or in other areas. But this is not 100% applicable. So it may be examples in which this multi-trophic aquaculture might help and might fit, and in other places not. So for me, again, the most important is having a good monitoring, a good identification on the characteristics, on the risk of this MPA, and doing a management plan and a business plan that guarantees enough resources to properly manage. And then in this context, we need to see if this is an option, is not an option, or is an option in certain conditions. So that's very difficult to respond because MPAs are a very large concept. Just imagine that just in the Atlantic Basin, there are 450 different kinds of designations of marine protected areas. So that's something impossible to respond in simplicity.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Puri as well. It obviously depends on the levels of protection and what's the purpose of your marine protected area. But overall, the idea is to provide a space for an ecosystem to regenerate. And that includes an entire ecosystem, not necessarily just one specific. So I would tend to say that these are two different issues. And of course, if you place, a marine protected area where you have mangroves or seagrasses, I see that we love seagrass in the chat. Of course, this should accelerate, enhance the ability of those seagrasses to regenerate and do their job as in terms of carbon storage and so on and so forth. But it shouldn't necessarily be the primary objective of a marine protected area, because the primary objective should be the recovery of biodiversity. However, again, depending on the levels of protection of your MPA, what's interesting as well is to have different types of protection next to each other. So you may have absolutely no extractive activity, so the fully protected areas that can be right next to less strict levels of protection, so where some types of extractive activities or cultures can be developed. So that's also interesting on how you can benefit from these, and there's a term for that, it's the spillover effect. We usually address it with regards to fish populations, but it could be interesting as well in terms of these different types of ecosystems for different purposes.
Yeah, thank you very much. It really shows that it's a tool and it's not one size fits all, and that it's more complex. So yeah, thank you for your insights on that. I'll continue with the next question from Simone Fore. How can Africa and Europe can work together to strengthen existing marine protected areas, including locally managed LMMAs, and expand their geographical scope and effectiveness towards 2030?
I will be glad to respond to this question, because certainly one of the activities we have been implementing under the EU Ocean Governance Project was connecting networks of managers. And for instance, we have the different networks operating in Africa, but also, for instance, MedPan operates in North Africa, but also in Europe and Asia. So I think the kind of networks help a lot to create exchanges between managers. But this is regarding the Mediterranean region, but we have networks in West Africa, Rampau, for instance, or Wiampan in the Indian Ocean. And we are exchanging between us and learning each other how we can support better the management in the different regions. So certainly, if we look at the protection of the Atlantic Ocean, we need to work Europe and Africa together, and with the Americas. This is not another way. So I really hope that this will be understood also by the governments and will support these connections, not just to have short-term projects, because the problem on this kind of cooperation is that often is an approach, and there's a project approach that just lasts for 3-4 years and the activity stops. So we should have long-term partnerships, long-term cooperation to really make this building capacity a permanent process that really impacts on the ground. But there are great examples, for instance, not just from Europe to export to Africa, but also we can learn a lot from African communities. I've been exchanging a lot with the community marine protected areas of Senegal, and it's a great example of involvement of local communities in the designation and in the management of MPAs that I would really like to apply in Europe. So I think we can learn each other a lot, and this is absolutely needed.
Mitchell, do you want to go first? Because
yeah, I think my answer is just really short, and not to, I think just in terms of an international research partnerships and so on, I think those all can be really helpful to inform decision making and cooperation between, I think, ideas exchange and so on between say the global north and the global south in terms of MPAs and so on. So that's all I really wanted to add.
Yeah, I agree with Puri. And when we speak about cooperation between Europe and Africa, we usually think about capacity building or management, finance, and so on and so forth. And all of this is very true. But as you said as well, we have a lot to learn from what's happening in Africa in terms of management of coastal areas, for instance. And I just want to share this great initiative that shows fantastic leadership from countries in the Western Indian Ocean with the Great Blue Wall. And the whole idea is to have a corridor, so multiple marine protected areas across those different countries of the Western Indian Ocean to favor the development of the blue economy. So it's, of course, the main objective is biodiversity and conservation. But in the meantime, yet again, we're going back to those co-benefits of livelihoods, creating jobs, food security, and so on and so forth. And the Great Blue Wall is East African initiative, and quite frankly, and I work closely with them, and I absolutely adore this project. But one of their ambitions is also to expand this, but expand this within the global south. Because in terms of leadership, it's not only the good practices, it also shows those group of countries which are willing to advocate for the ocean. And we have a number of coalitions of countries across the globe, but the Great Blue Wall is one of the only African-driven coalition of leaders on the ocean. And they're taking a lot of space and gaining momentum in the international fora, including at the climate COPs, because it showcases that we can work together with regards to the management of our resources, but also the ensuring the equity of sharing those resources across borders. And I think that's a fantastic example that we can learn from.
Thank you very much. It's really important that we start to work together, because even there are a lot of oceans and sea, at the end it's just one big ocean, and it's important even if we are not close to it. So the next question is from Urias Taylor. Have we understood to date the ecosystem of deep sea where is expected for deep sea mining projects?
No, we haven't. I think that would be just in short, I don't think we have any idea in comparison to, say, other parts of terrestrial or indeed certain parts of outer space, to be honest. I mean, we're still finding things down there almost every day. The discoveries being made all the time, and the idea that we would go down there and remove nearly 1.5 feet of the seabed in order to what seabed mining advocates call scooping or harvesting, when actually it's, you know, strip mining the seabed and removing biodiversity that might ever not be replaceable or regenerative is a terrible idea. So no, we really do not have a decent enough understanding of what is down there in order to ever, I think, pursue seabed mining in a sustainable manner, whatever sustainable necessarily means. So so yeah, that would be yeah, my short intervention there.
Yeah, building on what Mitchell said, that's actually one of the issues, that we don't have enough scientific consensus on the impacts that deep sea mining could have on those ecosystems, because it also opens the door to exploit and to convey deep sea mining, because we don't have, well, science hasn't told us that it's bad for the planet. Although I am not a scientist, but it seems like common sense. However, another thing that we know for sure is that these type of extractive activities would most certainly disrupt the sediments that are at the bottom of the ocean. And those sediments also store carbon. So we may not be completely sure about the impacts it will have on biodiversity, but we absolutely know that it will disrupt the carbon cycle. And given that climate change and that the ocean is one of the main carbon regulator, we should definitely avoid doing that.
And maybe I can just, I fully agree with what has been said, but I wanted to stress something. It's not exactly related to the deep sea mining, but when Loreley talk about the removal of sediments in the deep sea, it's not only the deep sea, it's also the recent studies on the impact of bottom trawling in terms of releasing carbon, which are amazing. So those kind of practices should be absolutely banned, whatever is the deepness. Because if we really want to do policies that are in favor of solving the climate change problem, we should avoid this kind of practices. So again, the lack of integration in the policies coming from different topics creates situations that are absolutely ridiculous, like those ones. So just going to take minerals from the deep sea, and then you are producing a lot of carbon release. But it's not only this. I agree that we are not aware of the impact of those activities that may affect thousands of miles away from the place in which the mineral is extracted. So if we could see this as we see impacts in the land, we will never accept. So I think that the precautionary principle should be absolutely applied in this case, and not waiting to have results of the impact, just avoiding the impact.
Yeah, thank you very much. And also for mentioning the precautionary approach. I think especially in this topic makes a lot of sense. And maybe this is a very good topic for a next webinar, to be honest, because there's so much to explore and to talk about. So we might come back to you for that. But moving on to the next question from Lais Jimenez. I work in the public institution responsible for managing MPAs in a state in Brazil, and I have quite practical doubts. First, how do you believe we as public managers can better connect our strategies and results? For example, I am developing monitoring protocols for mangroves, and I would like my results from Brazil to be the same / converse with others around the globe.
Well, I think that the easiest way is to create a network of marine protected areas managers in Brazil that connects with others. So years ago, before Bolsonaro arrives to Brazil, I was participating in a workshop targeting Aichi Target 11, Marine Aichi Target 11. So one of the conclusions of this workshop that was promoted by the UN Environment as well with the government of Brazil, one of the conclusions was the need to establish networks of marine protected areas managers in Brazil to facilitate all those exchanges at home and also connect them with other parts of the America principally, but not only America. You can, as I said, it's very important to get connected with other people. So you have mangroves in the Americas, but you have also mangroves in Africa and in Asia. So, but if you are not, you don't have the right institution around you, it's very difficult by a single manager to do it. So my idea will be, okay, if you really want to do this, connect with other managers in your country and establish a network in Brazil. And from here, you will be easily able to share with other countries, because this will benefit you and will benefit absolutely MPAs in other countries. So, but it's really necessary. You know that the managers of MPAs in another dimension, which is not technical, is not scientific, is just emotional. Most of them feel very isolated because it's not the same to manage a terrestrial protected area than to manage a marine one. So also the networks help a lot to build families, to build communities that really help, allows them to help each other and to have the sense of a large community able to solve problems. So that's my recommendation.
Thank you very much. If no one else wants to add something to this, I'll give the mic to Lavinia to ask the next question.
Thank you very much, Laura. And the next question is from Jeremy and Anbley Evans. So, should communities from non-oceanic states, example Turkmenistan, have rights to the international high seas BBNG's benefits?
I'm quite happy to take that one. I think I answered that in the chat with a link to a kind of longer open access article that maybe everyone can have a look at. I mean, I don't know if it's a question of should. I think you can argue that they already do under the BBNG agreement. And indeed, all the landlocked states under the Law of the Sea Convention enjoy a range of different benefits as well. So if you take a look, it's a very long drawn out article, but I would say that they do already under the BBNJ agreement through the use of kind of human rights language and the benefits that landlocked states enjoy as well. And there's lots of fundamental international legal principles so that they can do that, but primarily the fact that nobody owns the ocean and you can't appropriate it. So the idea of excluding landlocked states simply because they're landlocked, even though things like rain and the fact that a landlocked state will still be part of the global water cycle and still benefits from a healthy ocean and receives that would then imply ownership by coastal states, and that's just not right. So it's not a matter if they should, they do. I would put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think even if you look at the Law of the Sea Convention, there are specific provisions who mention also the access of landlocked states. So yeah, definitely. The next question comes from Nick Anthony. He says, thanks. How do legal protections in general as MPA compare to rights of nature jurisprudence in rivers? Are they dual strategies and complementary? Maybe Mitchell as a law expert.
Yeah. I was just hoping to get other people to speak. So I don't know if I don't think they're necessarily competitive, and I think they can of course be complementary. And particularly if we go back to some of our work at the Hub as well, in terms of this kind of engagement, well, not engagement, but this inclusion of rights holders and local communities within decision making as well. And so they may already, if the jurisdiction in which they're living might not necessarily recognize the rights of, say, a coastal space or a bay or whatever part of the coast it is, they might have the view or have the kind of spiritual or cultural connection that does have rights. And so if you involve them in decision making, then that would be recognized, and then you would still have that included, say, in an MPA in a more conventional way. And then if you then say constitutionally recognize the rights of nature, you would then need a way to uphold those rights and have a method of dealing with when those rights are infringed or violated. And one of those might then be to uphold those rights. That might then be the use of an MPA, for example, to protect the rights of, say, a coastal space. So I say they're really complementary, and I think they can be, they can work in synergy. So I'll go as far as that. Thanks.
From a non-law perspective, of course, they're definitely not in opposition, and I think there's a lot to be explored and a lot to be learned from what has happened in different countries, including South America, with the recognition of rights for rivers. And I just wanted to share this initiative that is being run by the Ocean Race to actually get those ocean rights going. And there have been discussing with a lot of high-level stakeholders how we can put together a declaration for ocean rights, and I think that would be quite interesting to dig in deeper.
Yeah, definitely agreed. Before we dive further into that, we have a few minutes left, and we have, I have two more questions here on what we noted down from all the chats. So maybe, only one of you can answer the question. So I'll ask this, and then Lavinia ask the second last one. And this one is from Justin Tejeda, also to Mitchell. Could you elaborate on your concerns regarding technological and geoengineering solutions proposed, maybe providing a particular example?
Yeah, sure. So I think this goes back to our discussion on seabed mining, where the science is not necessarily clear. We don't have an understanding of, say, let's pick one. I mean, for example, ocean-based kind of iron fertilization of the ocean is kind of prohibited under the CBD, but other ones I'm more concerned about, and ones that are really under discussion at COP at the Oceans Pavilion, which to me felt like an example of regulatory capture. And we have a lot of this in Aberdeen. We are the oil capital of Europe, and there's lots of things going on, but aside from that, ocean-based carbon dioxide removal, there's a range of different tools and technologies and fixes that can perform that, all of which are experimental. However, we've got absolutely no idea what the impacts on biodiversity are going to be, or indeed the impacts on those who depend on those biodiversity, so human rights, okay, rights holders as well. And those are legally protected internationally. Okay, so yes, we have obligations to reduce CO2 emissions, we have obligations to mitigate from climate change and adapt to them under the UNFCCC and indeed the Paris Agreement, but we also have an obligation to if we do that, we have to protect biodiversity and also protect human rights, and all of these things are interconnected. And this focus and this disproportionate focus on these, I think, is incredibly dangerous, because the technology is not there yet, and we will have a very, very short time to simply just stop putting CO2 into the atmosphere and stop exploiting fossil fuels. So hopefully that was quick, and if anyone else wants to elaborate, I'm happy to do that. But yeah, we're yeah.
Thank you, Mitchell. And if I will proceed with the last question of the night. Do you think that MPAs could coexist with small offshore renewable energy projects like floating wind that has lesser impact than fixed bottom, for instance? This is a two-in-one question. And the other question, does impact of land-based mining are assessed on ocean ecosystem and MPAs?
So maybe I may respond to the first one. Again, there is, I think the coexistence should be addressed under a marine spatial planning approach. And in general, I would say it's better that you don't put external elements in an MPA. But again, there is not a single response. It depends also on what are the values of this MPA, what were the ecological reasons to create an MPA. So it depends on the kind of direct impact of those structures or not. In general, I say it's better put outside. We are talking about today less than 10% of the marine surface under protection. So you have 90% in which you can put other structures. But the MSP, the marine spatial planning, is something that really, from my point of view, should be promoted and identifying which areas are more in favor or less for certain developments. And regarding the second part of the question, you see, I'm sorry, I lost the question. It was about...
does impact of land-based mining are assessed on ocean ecosystem and MPAs?
Should be assessed, but not necessarily are. So it depends on the country. It depends mainly on the legal framework and the capacity of the country to enforce those legal framework. So yeah, I would say that initially should be, but often most of the big impacts in marine protected areas comes from river basin problems, in which may include the mining. And yeah, as you know, there are many examples of mining impact in the coast. In the Brolhos National Park in Brazil, when a dam was broken, the park received a huge impact from this mining activity of this mining dam that was broken. So it should, but not necessarily is. And it's something we should pay attention, because again, it's always the same problem. We don't have a systemic approach. We try to manage things isolated as if they were isolated, but they are not. So, and the impacts in the sea, the big majority comes from land, not only from mining, but all the human activity. 99% of human activity happens in land. So that's a kind of awareness that today we don't have, especially in countries that have no coast. They don't feel involved. I really love this question regarding the involvement with the BBNG of certain countries with no coast, but this planetary awareness, unfortunately, is not still general. So we should really work to allow people to understand that everything is connected and every single action we do, even if it's far away, may affect the ocean.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm afraid we've come to an end. I would love to keep this conversation going. But thank you, Loreley, Mitchell, and Puri, for taking the time and sharing your knowledge and expertise and motivating us to keep going. And I've just put on the 2 QR codes again. So big thank you to all of the participants for your participations, your questions, and I'm very inspired myself, to be honest. And I would encourage you to scan the QR codes and sign up for the newsletters, get involved. If you have any more questions, then please reach out to us and we'd be happy to continue this conversation. Thank you so much to everyone. And I would say, I wish you all a happy evening or afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining and hope to see you in the next webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much,
Thank you,
everyone.
Laura and Eugenia,
Thanks.
as well, for organizing all of this.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.